Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto Anime episode review. This one's going to be for episode 35, which is called the Parent-Teacher Conference. And yeah, this was a kind of surprisingly just like really interesting and unique episode. It was really enjoyable because obviously there was a lot of references to kind of the idea of like now in this more peaceful time, how do they kind of approach, you know, how to like run a ninja village from the perspective of like the kids going to school here to like learn some ninja skills, but then not having this like complete need for every single one of them to become a ninja. And I liked how it kind of in terms of world building addressed that, in that it is not at all an expectation anymore that they just by default are all ninjas and because they all come from ninja families. Having some of the characters just kind of flat out say that no, I'm continuing on with school and I want to like go back to my family and like run this like temple or do this or that. That kind of made complete sense to me. And then obviously most of our characters are from the like really well-known ninja family, so most of them do want to become shinobi, and you know they constantly bring up the idea of the graduation test and this being this final really difficult kind of challenge to kind of graduate and actually become a shinobi. The only is, I suppose, if there was any issue with the episode, it would be that the whole like conflict in a way for Boruto throughout this episode of like him not really knowing what he wants to do, but kind of saying that yeah, I want to be shinobi, I just don't know what type of shinobi, was a little weird because it seemed like he was like towards the end of the episode, everyone basically knew what they wanted to do, and most of the characters were just saying, I want to become a ninja. And their answer was fine, but Boruto saying he wants to be a ninja but not being like super like set in stone about it was like a huge problem, was a little bit of an issue. I get the idea that he's kind of not yet at that point where he kind of, obviously it has to be pointed out to him at the end of this episode by Mitsuki that the kind of support role he plays with like the entire group, that the amount of help he has given so many other people along the way to get to them to the point where they have decided what they want to be, and that's the role that he needs to play. I definitely really like that you have Sarada, we know that her goal is to become Hokage, and that's obviously, I suppose, with Boruto's arc right now, what we're leading towards is him making that big decision that he wants to kind of, you know, support Sarada and her goal to be Hokage going forward. And that's the role that he'll play. Supporting like other characters in the way that he is now. This time he wants to kind of do it for fun, but going forward it will just be, he will always want to play that role of keeping this group together, remembering those old times, and when things get more serious, I suppose, stepping in to help so no one gets killed or anything like that. But I like how Mitsuki brought up like kind of where we've been so far in these first 35 episodes. Him inspiring Denki, him bringing kind of Iwabe back to the point where like Iwabe is going to graduate now after failing so many times, and so on. You get that first moment of him really supporting Sarada here, of like just calling her out for like, if you really are set in stone and wanted to become Hokage, you can't just sit out here scared and afraid to, you know, talk to those two who aren't really sure about what they want to do. You have to get in there if you really want to be Hokage, and that's his like first kind of role in acting as support to her. And she goes in and she obviously, you know, makes things work out between those two girls, and that they do actually both want to be shinobi, and that like one of them had like pressure from her family to do something else, but deep down she really did want to be a shinobi. And again, there's I think the influence on most of the class by Boruto of like, yeah, we want to all be together as shinobi, working together. So that definitely worked out well. It was just, I think, trying to really have it be this thing where like Boruto just, everyone's really concerned about the fact that he doesn't know what he wants to be, when he kind of says that he wants to be a ninja. It's just maybe his reasoning, he doesn't have the drive in the same way that the other characters do. If that's what they were getting at, then you know that's fine. But definitely like the bit at the end, I think sort of helped to kind of inspire Boruto a bit more of like, yeah, he realizes the role that he plays and is going to try going forward. And I think very much the setup at the end of the episode, that it was Kakashi dressed up as the reporter the entire time. He was talking to them. He's gotten an idea from filming everyone, what their goals really are and who's the most driven and so on. And so he's going to really heavily test them going forward. And that the thing with Kakashi is always that, like, for the most part, he's a pretty good-natured guy, but he takes these kind of tests fairly seriously in terms of, like, being committed to being a shinobi. So he's not just going to let them pass just because they want to be a shinobi. So next episode or next 2 episodes, depending on how long they focus on the graduation exam, it's going to be very, very interesting to see just how heavily they test all the characters, and if we see anyone fail, or do they all make it through in the end after some kind of struggles, and that they're very much setting up Kakashi versus Boruto, and that's going to be a really cool thing. And then, like, there's, I think we see Anko and Shino also involved in it, so it's going to be cool to see a lot of the older characters kind of fight again and kind of in a way demonstrate that kind of gulf in class, that as strong as most of Boruto's class is, that we're now dealing with, like, the characters who are, like, solidified as Jonin and above in the village, and how do they act versus them, the kind of difference in power level, like the bell test initially in Naruto, of how that played out. That's the sort of stuff that's, I think, going to be really, really interesting. I think it's going to be hopefully one of the most memorable episodes of the series up to now. I think they will get it right because of the Kakashi setup and everything that they have going on. They need to get it right, I think, is the only thing. So the kind of ending stuff I thought was good, like Kakashi and Haruka talking about this, and I think Kakashi just showing a slight bit of concern about, like, okay, it's peacetime, but we're not going to make the exam more lenient. And the setup, I think, from before, that, like, there were some years where no one passed the graduation test, so they're still making it a thing of, like, when you officially become a shinobi, you have earned it because you've passed something very, very difficult. So that setup was very well done. Rest of the episode, we got a really nice Boruto and Hinata conversation when he asked her about why she wanted to be a shinobi, and that added into, I think, the general tone of the episode of just how things have changed, and that she talks about coming from the Hyuga clan. It was just completely expected that they more or less had to train to become a shinobi, and there was no real choice either way, and it was tough, but those were the times. And her kind of just telling Boruto that your grandfather used to be a lot stricter kind of back then than he is now, and how time has kind of changed things, that in a way, this is Boruto not realizing something about kind of Naruto, in a way that Naruto very much represents the reason why this stuff is even possible. He kind of is, to some degree, like, why Hiyashi is kind of not as kind of strict as a character anymore, and so on. So I did like that. You had a slight setup, I suppose, of Naruto is less and less at home as the episodes seem to go on. So they're gradually, I think, more and more building up where Boruto is when we get to the Boruto movie. They still have, I think, a little bit of work to do, because the Boruto that we know from the series now seems like quite a different character to the Boruto at the start of the Boruto movie, to the point where he would do everything that he has to do. I think the plot point that they're going to go for is that he's not taking the graduation test seriously. Obviously, there's a difference between the graduation test is just to become a genin, and then the Boruto movie is the Chunin exam. So I'm definitely wondering, like, are we just going to, like, slowly go through this? Like, here's them as genin, here's them doing all these missions as genin, and then it's going to be, like, still a long time before we get to the Boruto movie Chunin exam stuff. Which is where Boruto kind of seems to have some of the struggle stuff. So I think that's the only problem here, is just, like, they seem to be setting up a lot of the similar stuff that Boruto tackles in the movie for just the academy graduation test. So it's probably going to be a case where, like, Boruto gets through this exam kind of maybe just about, there's still maybe doubts about him, that will be addressed going into the movie. But that's where definitely I think they need to do work, because they're going to have Boruto becoming a Genin be this kind of, substantial moment of like him officially becoming a shinobi, but then they have to kind of bring him down to a point where he is at the way he is in the movie, and I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do that. But that's just the questions in general that we have about kind of what is the overall direction of the anime going forward, in terms of like, are we going to catch up with the manga, or are they kind of doing things a little slower in the anime so that doesn't happen anytime soon? That's the big question that I definitely have about things going forward. But yeah, I think we got to see Kiba on like an advert for like dog food or something like that, which was pretty funny, just kind of showing that one other aspect of like becoming a shinobi that they brought up is that it's not just that you become a shinobi and there's shinobi work to be done, but that also you become famous as a shinobi in the village. You're basically a celebrity, and because of that you get the opportunity to be in like commercials or potentially films. And then I think, as Kakashi as a reporter says, that also just having that knowledge base of like basic shinobi skills gives you a really good opportunity in lots of other kind of roles that you could use your jutsu in and so on. And Boruto realizes that he's kind of seen that around the place, at like the post office, the firefighters in the village are that, and so on. So again, just that world building of like, it's not just all about ninjas, kind of like it was in the original show, and you never really saw too much of anything else. Now they're very much presenting it as that like ninja is one path you can go down. It's like the history of the village, and it's still a big thing, but that there's so much more you can be because we're in a peacetime, and I definitely appreciated that. So that's more or less my review on the episode. I suppose the Orochimaru stuff I forgot to mention. That was really fun, just to get that scene of Orochimaru with Naruto and Shikamaru. And then, in a way, I appreciate them not just kind of showing us the Mitsuki and Orochimaru talk with Shino. I like that they just left it there as the visual of like Shino being confronted by Orochimaru, but it's the parent-teacher conference, and it's such a weird situation because like Shino never really interacted with Orochimaru, but he obviously knows who he is. So it's this kind of super odd kind of grouping of characters here that just worked out quite well. And I think it also served to just highlight that like Orochimaru has kind of changed over time. They still could do anything they want with him, but it feels like they've committed to just, he's not really going to go rogue anymore. He seems to honestly appreciate that Mitsuki is allowed to go to the academy, and he's the one obviously who's kind of in a way pushed Mitsuki kind of towards Boruto as kind of like an example, and so on. That like as kind of Mitsuki says, in a way he's become a shinobi like because of and kind of for Boruto, the whole you're my son thing, and I do like that their kind of approach of kind of letting him help the village rather than just kind of putting him in prison is kind of working out now. So that's an interesting one for sure. But yeah, that's all I really want to say about this episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode as well as what I had to say about it. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.